top of the rundown, Israeli protesters are calling for a million-man march on Saturday. The mass rally is said to take place in at least 50 cities. Officials have decided to shut down train services to Tel Aviv ahead of the march to prevent thousands of people from attending. Israel has been rocked by a wave of protests in recent months against the high cost of living and social injustice. The protesters are angry with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's handling of the economy and his expansion of settlements. They blame the housing crisis in Israel on the outsized financial support for settlement activities. Well, Ralph Schoenman is the author of The Hidden History of Zionism, joining me on the line from Berkeley, California to talk about this. Many thanks for being with us. Are these protests only about the housing crisis, or is it really deeper than that?
Yes, it is certainly deeper than that. It is not only because of the specific consequences in terms of the cost of housing and the runaway cost of food, but because of the growing awareness amongst Israelis that the concentration of power is so enormous that it's virtually in the hands of a few prominent families. The financial apparatus in Israel, like that in other capitalist countries and certainly the United States, has arrogated to itself not only power but the basic income and riches and financial distribution is in the hands of a very tiny oligarchy in Israel. And the population is now experiencing the consequences of that, and they are making the association between that reality and the nature of the Israeli state, which is pitted against the peoples of the region and, of course, predicated upon the subjugation of the Palestinian people.
And what's happening in Israel, especially this million-man march planned for Saturday, are calling into question the notion of democracy in Israel. Israel has touted itself as a good democracy for others to copy.
Well, the propaganda of imperialism and of Zionism amongst the myths pertaining to the Zionist state, and one of the myths that I discussed in The Hidden History of Zionism is the myth of Israel as a democratic society. In fact, the only democracy in the Middle East is the usual propaganda. But real rights, as in apartheid South Africa, are reserved for Jews alone in a state structure that emulates entirely the institutions of apartheid. 93% of the land reserved exclusively for Jews. All rights are defined not in terms of citizenship per se, but of ethnic affiliation and religious identity. For example, the land laws of the Jewish National Fund were incorporated into the formal apparatus of the state, which require that in order, and this is a matter of law, to be entitled to own land or live on land or to work on land, you have to prove or show at least 4 generations of maternal Jewish descent. The consequence is so obvious that it's absurd to talk about a democratic society in which rights are so defined. I'd like to give the following example. Suppose in a country like the United States or any other country, in order to for Jews to have rights, they had to, or rather to put it correctly, in order for people to be able to live in land or to own land or to work on land, you had to show you had no Jewish blood for at least 4 generations. Everybody would understand the racist character of such a society. So the notion of democracy, as in apartheid South Africa, all rights are entirely confined to those who embrace the Israeli state, and the definition of citizenship is that which is requiring demonstration of Jewish religious identity.
And Mr. Schoenman, one last question, and very briefly, please. What's your prediction for the future? How do you think this is going to pan out? After all, this is not a protest against one government or one prime minister. This is about the widening division in Israeli society as a whole.
I think that is absolutely correct, but the fundamental issue here is that the nature of the Zionist state is that it is pitted against the peoples of the region. And one cannot separate the struggle against Zionism and the struggle against the Israeli apartheid state. One cannot separate that from the struggle against the country-selling regimes in the Arab East, and that is especially concretized in the activists in Egypt calling for the first million-man march against Israel within Egypt itself. Political activists have called for million-man protests outside the Israeli embassy, and the calls in Egypt are echoed by Israelis who are holding up signs of support for the Egyptian uprising, and that is the road towards the linking of the struggle against the exploitation of the Israeli state to its settler character, its racist character, its imperial character, so that, as in South Africa, even amongst those who had been settlers, they began to support the African National Congress and the Pan-Africanist Congress in South Africa. They supported the anti-apartheid movement. That's the process unfolding within the Israeli state.
Mr. Schoenman, I'm afraid we're out of time. We're going to have to leave it there.
See that
I hate to cut you off, but we're going to have to do that.
To the rights of the oppressed.
I appreciate it. Mr. Ralph Schoenman, the author of The Hidden History of Zionism, speaking with us on the line from Berkeley, California. Hope to speak with you again, sir.